Hey, M Gokulakrishnan? I think that is the name. I hope I'm not butchering your last name. I don't know what the M stands for, so I'm just going to say hi, M. My name is JD. I'm an animator at Industrial Light and Magic. I've been there for, this is now the 11th year, a bit more. I'm a senior lead animator there, and I just finished Tomorrowland. And before that, I did Transformers. I'm currently on the new Star Wars. And I am here to critique your winning piece. So for those who might not have seen it, let's go and watch the whole thing here.
I'm excited and I feel relaxed and I'm ready to party with the best of them. I'm excited.
Super cool. Some really, really good stuff there. So my comments are going to be just a bit more in general, things that I might tweak a little bit in terms of acting moments or just questions that I have for you. Again, take it or leave it. It's just subjective first pass opinion, like first impressions, and then I can go into a bit more detailed stuff that you might, take into consideration as you continue with other shots, which I would love to see because they're really, really good. I would love to see more work from you. So as a whole, right, as we go through,
I'm excited and
I'm going to, hopefully the volume is okay. My first impression was that the characters felt like they were fighting for attention. So if you start playing, I'll bring down the volume actually this time. There's, the Natalie Portman character there. As she turns around, we kind of want to look at her. She's just the most moving at this point. But the thing is, from the very beginning, there's movement here, there's movement here, and there's movement here, while there's one movement here. And it's a bit unclear. It's like I'm looking at a lot of stuff here, but I feel like you really want to see her expression and see what she thinks before she goes into it. So there could be something where you start with her, and you could have some movement here, like, overall movement, where, all that, keep all what you have and keep her super still. And then you start to reduce this for sure, then the head, and then the last one would be this. So you would have, the eye would travel in a way this way, and then you could have like a slight movement. She might be rotating the bottle a bit over there. So the eye goes here, and then that leads to her. And then you can start that stuff with the mouth and the head. Just, give it a couple of frames at the very beginning. So we understand geography. We understand both characters. We know what's going on. That's kind of the relationship that they have. But then you guide the audience over to her, and then right now it's just a bit too just competing in terms of movement. Even without sound, I'm looking at this and I feel like I see her, but I'm missing all the lip sync because that stuff is repetitive here, going on all the time. So I'm kind of stuck in that area. Let's go up here.
I'm excited and I feel relaxed and I'm ready.
And it kind of continues throughout here. We're focusing now on her, but while all this happens, I see these guys going on. This is going back and forth, and there's still some head stuff going on here. So I would tone that down massively once we're on her. And once she does that crazy move, you can get back onto her with that, which I like, which you have here. And then, we have a little moment over both kind of stop, and we're drawn to her. Both stop there. We can look at her, especially with the blinking. And then that head goes down, the audience comes back to her, which is good. That's all cool. You might argue that at this point, again, this might be big, but I think it's going to be okay because she does so much stuff that it's more just ambient stuff and it's kind of a more natural reaction. That's what an actor would do at this point. And she's moving around and around that we're we are looking at her. That's awesome. And that voice is great too.
With the best of them.
That's cool too. And I think this works here. You got that going on here. Now you might argue that you do this pointing, and I'm inclined to go, oh, okay, well, I'm going to look at her because you're done with this action. It's a great frame actually. This is actually great. I'm going to pause it just quickly. That, her expression, like that is her current mood, and that is how she reacts. And this is great, when you can stop a shot on any frame and it tells the story, it's great. But to go back, so she does that move, right, and she points towards her, so I'm inclined to look at her for her reaction. But then we're suddenly going back to this, and first time when I watched this, I suddenly saw this, and I kind of missed the poppiness there. Now, you are stuck with the audio. Listen to this here.
With the best of them.
Something you could do, and I think that might work because that leads into my question. Imagine he does all of this here, and instead of doing this, don't do that. I'm just, mentally I'm going, she should be doing something where she's almost pointing to her, which goes to this, and I'm like, yeah, I got that drink right here, baby. So that could be something. It might be too on the nose and too weird, but it could be something that leads us all the way back to this. And then you do that. And instead of doing this, it's more of a, she's done that and getting like, huh, what do you have to say about that? And then we can go back to her, and then that reaction from this to this would happen at the end when she is done. And the reason why I think this might work a bit better is because she's annoyed and she's totally drunk. You might argue maybe pretend to be drunk, but there's all that stuff going on, and it feels like all as one cohesive character. That's her current situation and emotion and all that stuff. But at the end, this felt weird. This has just a slight feeling, especially with the eyebrows, a slight feeling of she feels maybe bad. After all of this, she goes, oh, was that maybe too much? I don't know if that's kind of like a teasing thing, like, hey. It's just the facial expression, the way that her eyes are and her eyebrows. It has a certain sadness maybe, but it's some hesitation. She's a bit unsure. That gets better. This feels more like, I don't give a crap, right? But that till here, that section suddenly, to me, felt like a shift in tone, a shift in, this is how she feels, and it's suddenly, well, am I actually feeling bad? But then, okay, why not? This could be a moment where you're flipping the audio around and she's actually just pretending. But then you go back to this expression, and this goes back to, no, I don't care, I'm drunk, I want to drink. So that was kind of something that was a bit unclear about towards the end. And I think if you would switch the thing of pointing over there, whatever you want to do acting-wise, to bring it back to this, she does that, and then you go from this expression to that, and in between, keep that character, keep that emotion where she's like, yeah, that's what do you have? Like, I did this, what do you have at that point? And then we can, as an audience, go back, but she's kind of, if she does a point, which again might be too on the nose, but if it's something like this where she goes, huh, what about you? We are inclined as an audience to follow that gaze, follow that look, and go, okay, well, how are you reacting? And then she goes, huh, into that. That's that. That for me is as a whole, the main reaction that I had. And if I look at just animation-wise, I'm gonna go with her first. There's a bit more, a bit less actually on her. I'll bring down that volume. So I think the lip sync overall is pretty good if you look at it at the end. So when you look at how she starts here, this is really neat, and I love that all that little stuff you have there. It's a slight rotation in the hand, which is good, because I'm going to be talking about fingers and hands, but this is all great stuff there. I like all that beginning, that's all cool. But then you get to a moment where she puts her hands on that elbow part here, and this, you can scrub through this section, you see how this elbow goes up and down, and the head goes up and down. So there's a lot of movement, but at the same time, I don't see anything going on in the wrist. So this is kind of an IK arm hands type of thing where, if you have your hand here and the elbow goes down, you can see how much it's going to take with it. The fingers can be locked, that's fine. To some extent, I mean, it's going to be some residual action, and all that stuff is going to influence this. But just right now, it's just a bit too IK-ish. You might also argue that, and I know this is a pain in the butt, but to change, but if she goes forward, that elbow would also move, and if you look at that elbow, that's all good, right? At this point, I might argue it's maybe a bit too simple because it goes down in one axis. It could have a slight arc to it, but then after that, you can see how the elbow is fairly locked, if not completely locked. Now, again, elbow locking and knee locking, all that stuff is a pain, but as a picky note here, this is what we need to get a bit more life in weight, because she is leaning on this, and this might potentially go up a bit and change that hand, and so a few more complexities in that aspect would be cool. Same thing when you go, and when she puts the fingers on, after all this, they hit this pose, after this, and then they kind of change. It feels like if she puts on this and she cuts laying down, there will be a moment of hand adjustment. I don't think tightening, but it could be like a little rotation, something that is being influenced by all of this moving as well. And then here, as you go, this feels a bit, it's almost pose to pose, where it just feels like the head and the hands, they are moving at the same time. Now, I know you want that explosion, but I think you are afforded a frame, at least one, of potentially tightening of the hands. They might go like this, they might go like that, but the moment of I'm just showing a frame or two. Two might even be too much, and one might sound too picky, but I think it'll be neat with a slight detail of finger changes and even an eyebrow. You have a little bit in the face in there, but just a bit more to slightly indicate a little anticipation there before she does all this. And careful when you go out in that pose here. It just, there are lots of sharp angles here, and you can, I know if in that rig there are moments where you can slightly bend this part and this part just a tad, given also that it's that fast. Not that you want a smear frame, I don't think it's that fast enough. But like this to me feels better. There's a slight curve, but especially the fingers continue that curve, whereas here it's very blocky, and I think you can bring in the pinky and kind of add a little bit of a curvature to that silhouette there. This is a bit tricky, but I can kind of see that. The finger's nice, and all that's cool. I love how you have that moving hole, how she gets into that pose. That's all great. Careful here, you got, visually it looks like the elbow, the shoulder. The shoulder goes straight up right there. And I know she does a little side to side, but given the perspective, it looks more like just a simple straight up with no arc and no complexity there. So I will bring that shoulder from here, potentially, if that line is here, then over there. So from this angle, it doesn't look like you're just doing this, but it has a slight rotation like that. So you can still do this, but has a slight side to side to it, to give the pose a bit more perspective. And then don't forget, as you do all this, go through all that, there might be still slight more rotation on the wrist. So it's not completely locked. The other thing that's visually weird is that you got that neckline here from her dress, or whatever she's wearing there, and then that line, and then it kind of squeezed down into almost like a scale. And again, if you add that rotation, it feel a bit more like it's the body actually doing it. And just on a slight note, it's also slightly mirrored by your wrist here and the knees. I know this, you're not going to see this on real time. Actually, now that I saw that, that's all I'm seeing. So I think with her, it's fine because she goes like that, but for her, bringing that forward is going to help take away that symmetry there and movement. I love that little head shake there, but I feel like there's something where it's doing this while doing one move, and you could do this while the move has a slight arc to it. She goes, oh, instead of, oh, like that would be, oh, and have a slight curve. So getting away from one axis, and the one axis thing is pretty big on her on the head too. I'm going to get to that later. Great stuff with the hair too. Yeah, it just feels like you hit that pose and it's kind of a repetitive, high frequency shake there. That's all great. I love that. This is more arc-wise. It feels very straight. I'll bring down the onion skinning here. See that? It's very, very straight. So have a little bit of a dip there for your arc. Might be good. And it might be something where you go up and out like that, or out like that. Something where it has a little bit of a twirl at the end, so it's not so super flat. This feels like she's just on a table or something. And then careful here, I would actually probably rotate this wrist counterclockwise visually in screen space, so that you can curl the finger in to give this an added curvature here, just so it's not so bam, actually like that. It feels like slightly weird. So then it gets better. Again, you can rotate a bit more to give that curve, which then here is not too shabby here. And I think for this, I think this all works with the fingers. This feels to me slightly too much. I know fingers can go out pretty far, the pinkies, but sometimes it just feels like people break it a bit too far. And I would bring it in a bit more to be more aligned with that part of the wrist so that you have somewhere to go once you get to that point. Because for instance, like here, I don't mind it as much. You might argue that this is a bit of a straight line here. So you could potentially bring that thumb in. But probably what I would do is keep that pinky bit in and then keep that guy there. It's just something with that pinky that feels slightly, it's just that angle here. It's a bit harsh. That's all great here. Go back to the music, the sound, I mean.
To party!
I love the little steps back there.
Party!
That's great. Now, for this part, when she goes up here, so she got one swing here, right? Then you get another swing here, and this potentially rotate that wrist out this way so that you can have part of that palm adding a bit of rotation and mass to it, and you can still somehow keep, you know, those fingers, but this again feels very harsh. And I think if you rotate in the top part, like this part, you know, of the wrist, like the way it's towards my camera, like this feels, I can't even do it, like this feels harsh in here versus bringing it out to give slight more curvature. Just because it's such a long time we see this, and just you can give it a slight sheet for a slight more rotation there. Ever so slight. This is super cool. But what I was saying here is that you got one arm going up, one arm going up here. I can buy that. One is with the bottle, and that goes into what she's singing here, and with the hand is nice. But then that, even though it's not a fully stretched arm, it does another swing out, and I feel at that point it just felt repetitive. So you can do 1, 2, and it might be something where she goes out like that, like, oh, and it's more like a turn and bringing that hand out in front of her. So it's not, you know, 1, 2, 3, but you might do 1, 2, and then on the third one, instead of going back down the same way, you go in something in front of her. So it's, oh, and then it has like a slight flourish and an S-curve. You know, something where it might be something like that, in a way where you don't cover her face, or you bring it down like this. So while she goes back like that with her head and body, the arm goes down like that for a nice little camera move and contrast. And then, you know, for this pose, which means she might end up being out like that, just a little bit. You don't want to twin this here, but you might be able to work this into that part.
The best of them.
That's all great. And again, this is just from before in terms of where we put the focus. And this is my universal gesture for focus. I don't know what that gesture means. But the rest is great. Again, the hair is great. It's a great moment there. Great expression. It's just that part, acting-wise, I felt a bit confused. And you might argue, for picky's sake, you know, you see all the gaps between those fingers. When she pops that, there's going to be tightening. She holds this, and it's going to be, I'm going to hold this really strongly here because I need that finger to be loose so I can do this. So the moment she does this, there's more tension on these guys. So then you could close the gap like that, right? They are like this now. Close it here. So you can see the little black lines there. Let me go a bit closer. If I can. Yes, I can. So you can see there's little black lines there. You might argue it's the render in the shadow, but especially through here, you can see it feels like there's a lot of gap there. So if you can, here you can even bring the index a bit higher, so it's not like that, but you know, a bit higher. And then when she does this, you really can see the compression and the squeeze on those fingers. Bring this back here. Yeah. Now for her friends,
I'm excited.
I think the main impression on her, like everything is really well done technically. Again, my picky notes aside, I think because she's not the main character, there's a bit more roughness to the animation, where I think you should just do one more pass of polish where you want to take away repetition, where how the cell phone is going up and down. You have a slight change here, but it feels a bit repetitive. These guys go back and forth, a bit repetitive. You know, you can scrub back and forth, and it feels like you're hitting the same keys. A, B, A, B, A, B versus A, B, C, D, and then maybe back to A. Just giving it a bit more contrast in the back and forth. And like for her head animation here, this feels like it's going down in one axis, just going one down, versus potentially down a bit over, maybe with a slight tilt. You know, something a bit more complex in the move. Same thing here, you go back up, it's in one axis. And then you have, that is great. I wonder if this could be even a bit faster. That little shock, that's a bit harsher there in the feet. But then be careful, you go here and then you have that elbow, that shoulder I mean, goes up a bit late. It feels like you want to bring this earlier because it's that hand, that arm on there, and she's straightening herself up. And if you do that, I would just bring it up a bit higher, and as you do this, take that part of the chest, rotate clockwise, so that shoulder up influences that part of the chest, mainly, right? So right now, it feels like it's just a very separate move with a little bit in here, so they're almost twin, but it feels like you can almost go bigger here, and then it brings up that part of the chest. It feels like this and this, they stop at the same time as you scrub. Same thing with the head. So it could be a bit more sharper here, and you could almost go, you know, on her reaction. This goes sharper. This here, where her cell phone, she kind of brings it up a bit. It's not that same rotation. She brings it up. So we bring the audience from, if they happen to look here, but, you know, in terms of guiding the audience to her face, this, and then the last thing would be that. In terms of movement, and careful her head. Feels like it's an IK. It's like an IK head. You're stretching and translating. It feels like this is a bit too go-go gadget. If it's a weird reference. Sorry, it's an 80s cartoon or something. Where the head just kind of translates up and scales back down. It just feels a bit odd. Now that's fine. I like that. You got the focus here. Now this, again, it feels like it's pretty much just in Y. With no, you can have a bit more of an arc. And I would say a slight tilt over. So it's not just that, but it's kind of like that. And not crazy, you know, like, what? You want to keep it, you know, as subtle as you have it here, but this just feels a bit too mechanical. One axis, and then at the same time, it doesn't take anything here. So if you do this, it's going to bring an ever so slight rotation into the chest during that move. Great expression, though. I love this. This reminds me so much of an old Chuck Jones, Tom and Jerry, where Tom is having something like that. Such a great moment. Love that. Love the little blink.
With the best of them.
Now, when you do this, that, again, the shoulder up, it feels very isolated. It's just shoulders. Nothing in the chest. And then she just does just that. So you can, again, add complexity where you keep what you have, but there's an overall move over where she might go, right? She goes like this with a head, a slight tilt in Y, with a slight tilt over, with a slight body over. So it's not just this, but it's just a bit more. Nothing crazy, just a bit more. And then that is fine. And I think that's about it. I think so, right? I got my notes here. Oh, yeah. Sorry, I forgot one here. On the fingers, you might argue that every time she types, there might be a finger change. I don't think so, but maybe a little bit every now and then. Like this guy on here, because you got tap, tap, tap. And then this could be something with her pinky. But the main thing is that when she goes, it feels like it's just an angle change because of the hands, but I feel like we got the same pressure here on the fingers, as opposed to, you know, she's typing it, that might be curled a bit more like that, right? Imagine the phone is towards me, and then you got the pressure where the fingers turn into this, the way you have it here. Mainly, I'm saying that on the you might want to squeeze them in. Just feel some pressure, something, but it's mainly just a pose change, which I'm not quite feeling, especially in the index finger. And she has all this, and then potentially on that look. See how you have that arm go up? I would probably do the opposite and go down. She's like this, and she goes, oh, she's like that, and she might go Just as a subtle thing of I'm bringing it down because I want this to be out of my way so I can see more. So again, it doesn't have to be a big move, but just motivation-wise, I think we'll bring that down. And then there's some change there, but again, I think it could be a bit bigger. That's cool, except here I would offset fingers, so it doesn't feel like one pose into the next. Slight offset, maybe a pinky goes first. So a bit more complex. And then careful as I'm scrubbing through here again. When she does this, there might be a slight rotation clockwise in her whole wrist, so that this section here doesn't feel so locked. So it feels a bit like an IK arm. Especially through here, it would be neat. If you are going out, it feels like that part of the elbow, that corner might come out screen left a bit more. Again, it feels like an IK arm where this is really locked. I think that is it. And that's in principle, as you go out with the shoulders, something happens to the elbow a little bit, so we'll change there. But I think that's it. Yeah, those are my 2 cents. It's great work. It's really entertaining to watch. You can hit some really nice poses with both characters, but she's really obviously the standout. And this might be a super weird note. I will probably take out that plant and maybe have it here. Might not even need it at all. It just felt like she is on my, this is totally weird, but on my very first viewing, still frame, because I haven't pushed play yet. And again, it sounds totally weird, but it felt like she was impaled by all kinds of spikes, and that's why she laid there. Which, you know, you look at this makes no sense whatsoever, but my first visual cue, I think that plant was kind of weird. And you might, where is she here? She might, maybe a plant here or something if you need it. Could be here. Anyway, it's not a big deal. But yeah, that is it. Hope it was somewhat helpful. If you got any questions, you can go to Jean-Denis.net. That's Jean-Denis.net or JEANDENIS.net. It's my website. On there you got my email. Email me, let me know, hey, what was that? I don't understand anything, or yeah, that was cool. I got some questions about this, or nothing. It doesn't really matter. Feel free to disregard anything I just said. But if you have anything, any questions, any concerns, or anything to follow up, email me and let's talk about it. All right? Thank you.